Welcome to the France 24 interview. I'm Hervé Amorik and I'm in the private meeting room of the Irish Prime Minister, Enda Kenny. Taoiseach, Fáilte go France 24, welcome to France 24.
Gurmagad, the Fáilte Roth Bienvenue.
You're about to take over the presidency of the EU, the rotating presidency, at a moment of increasing disparities between North and South, between Eurozone members, non-Eurozone members, and Britain seems to be questioning its future within Europe. Yeah. What is the state of the Union, Taoiseach?
I think it's a union that has been riven by a sense of uncertainty for quite some time. It's a union where there's been a lot of talk about governance, but perhaps not enough about making the union competitive. I think, but there's a recognition by European leaders now of the requirement to actually make decisions and follow them through, in the sense of the European Union playing its part on the global platform. So our presidency from the 1st of January will focus on stability and on growth and on jobs. And stability can only be brought about where you have trust between leaders about what we're actually doing. And in that sense, I was happy that the last European Council meeting actually did deliver on a decision that was made some time prior to that, to have in place the framework, the legal framework for discussions about the single supervisory mechanism. So I detect a new sense of focus by European leaders. I think that's to be welcomed.
Europe has taken its first step towards a banking union with the adoption of a single supervisor. How do you keep the momentum going for reform?
Well, the dates have been set for March and June for the conditions that will apply for the single supervisory mechanism to be in place. Obviously, this will lead eventually to banking union, where the ECB will have the supervisory capacity and together with national regulators will be able to intervene if that is required. This is a case of actually proving that, while there are different views on a whole range of issues, that good politics can draw people together, get a consensus and a conclusion and move on.
Will the EU budget be your first test?
Well, the multi-annual financial framework, or the budget, is actually the responsibility of the President of the Council, President Van Rompuy. But because we'll hold the presidency, there will be an alignment, obviously, of interest here in having this put through. The multi-annual financial framework, I hope, will be concluded early in the spring. There are differences of opinion between the Commission recommendations, the Presidency recommendations, and the recommendations of a number of countries. But it's very necessary that we have a budget, and that it be a budget that's capable and that's sufficient of delivering the services for the Union. I want to see a budget that is strong in retention of the common agricultural policy, that has depth in terms of innovation and research, but that can be put through, because that means that Ireland can then focus on its work in terms of the reform of the common agricultural policy and on the many pieces of legislation that must go through.
Turning to job creation, 15% of the population are unemployed here. 26 million throughout Europe are out of work. Is there anything concrete you can do to give them hope?
Yes, this is completely unacceptable. Youth unemployment at 58% in Greece, 50% in Spain, 28, 29% here, 26 million out of work across the Union. This has to be the absolute focus of the decisions of the European Council. And when you look at some countries, how they have changed their labour laws and the cost of doing service and the cost of doing business, competitiveness actually increases. And I think that countries can learn from those who have done very well with the young people in particular, or the small and medium enterprises. And I would like, as the incoming presidency, to be able to demonstrate that a small country like Ireland, in a very short time, can actually prove that reputation can be restored, that you can prove that people working with government can make decisions that increase the opportunity for investment in jobs and careers as a consequence. But really, Europe does need to make a major impact in terms of employment for young people. Otherwise, you have, frustration, cynicism, anger, and the rise of extremism on either side.
Let's turn now to a very sensitive subject in Ireland. Abortion is currently illegal, but your government has agreed to legislate on abortion in the case where the life of the mother is at risk. Now, more than 10 women every day travel to Britain for a termination. Is Ireland going to take responsibility for this situation, or will you continue to export the problem?
Well, you've raised two questions. The Supreme Court clarified the Irish Constitution after a number of referenda over the past 20 years. The situation is that the Supreme Court have clarified that abortion is legal in certain circumstances in Ireland, but it has no regulation. So government are required to act here between the clarification given by the Supreme Court and the decision of the European Court that Ireland was in breach of the Convention of Human Rights. So it's a very narrow path that Ireland has got to deal with now. And what we're going to do is introduce regulations and legislation that will bring restrictions and safeguards, extra safeguards, and legal certainty and clarity to an area that is completely unregulated at the moment. So that means that Ireland has got to bring about clarity in regard to the protection of the life of the mother, and at the same time have due regard and full respect for the life of the unborn. In the other side of the argument, in regard to the inclusion of suicide, there are no regulations there, and it will be the duty of government in working with people to put in a clarification and restrictions that this does not in any way become abortion on demand, or that abortion is seen as a form of contraception.
This law may spark a major row between Ireland and the Catholic Church. How divisive an issue is it?
Well, this proved to be very divisive in the 1980s. And on two separate occasions, the people were asked to change the constitution and they didn't do so. So government have now got to act. Obviously, time has moved on. And in the debates that will take place, all sectors and all religious organisations and every other sector will have various views. It is a case that has polarised Irish society in the past. But what we want to do here is have a very sensitive, understanding, comprehensive discussion that will include as many people as possible in understanding that it is necessary to introduce regulations, clarity and certainty to an area that is currently unregulated.
Returning to the economy, Taoiseach, Ireland is now seen as a country on the road to recovery. Of the countries in the Eurozone which were bailed out by Europe and the IMF a couple of years ago, will Ireland be the first to emerge next year from the rescue program?
I hope so, and the signs of confidence are there. But let me make this very clear, that having restored Ireland's reputation, we are now the subject of comment from economists and politicians and business leaders. They say that Ireland is doing very well. And it may well be so that there are signs of confidence returning to our economy, but it's still in a very fragile state. So what we do need to help us exit our programme is the assistance and the support which has been committed from our European colleagues. That means in respect of bank debt arising from the decision of the European Council to break the link between sovereign and bank debt, and on the other hand, in respect of the ECB and the famous promissory notes from the former Anglo-Irish Bank. We need that assistance to guarantee our exit from the programme in 2030.
Let me come to that. In March, the European Central Bank is expected to present Ireland with a bill of €3 billion for the debts of a bank, Anglo-Irish, which no longer functions in the economy. Will Ireland pay this debt in March?
The situation here, this is a legacy, which is an enormous burden on Irish taxpayers here. Remember, we are the only country which were required to shoulder a burden of 64 billion because the policy at the time was that no bank would be allowed to fail. Now, what we have set out very clearly to do is to restructure and re-engineer those promissory notes so that we will not be required to pay 3.1 billion in March of next year. And I'm hopeful for a conclusion on that before that date.
There were riots on the streets of Greece, 36 general strikes. Greece was given debt reduction. In Ireland, there were no riots, no strikes. You did everything Europe asked, but yet Ireland wasn't given an easing of the terms of the bailout. Is that a paradox?
Well, Ireland's in a very different position than Greece. Obviously, Ireland received our interest rate reduction. Ireland has been able to change the issues in the Memorandum of Understanding with the Troika. Ireland's position is now very clear as to what we need. We have become more competitive ourselves. We've restructured the banks. They're now raising money without a state guarantee. There's a very solid line of investment into the country. We've got 1,000 multinationals to help drive our economy. But the other end of that equation is that we have been committed to having support from our European colleagues, both at European Council level, and we have great support there, and from the ECB, and I hope we get that support, because that's going to be critical for us to be able to demonstrate that Ireland can be the first country in the Eurozone to emerge from a programme, and we hope to do that in 2013.
Taoiseach, the last Irish presidency in 2004 was a great success with EU enlargement. The constitutional treaty was concluded here in Ireland. How will your presidency measure up to this?
I hope our presidency will be seen as energetic and enthusiastic and vigorous proponent of being in the delivery of solutions. And the bigger issue here is that you really demonstrate to other countries that are in some difficulties that you can emerge from this like Ireland, provided everybody cooperates here. And my single message would be that at the end of Ireland's presidency, I would like to see all the countries having made a real onslaught on the creation of jobs, particularly for young people. This is so important for the future.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Our guest was the Irish Prime Minister, Enda Kenny. Stay with us on France 24.